The next step is to get this data set that we've downloaded from the Census Bureau imported into Google Sheets so that we can analyze it and learn something from it. This next part isn't part of that process, but I want to show you what this file looks like. I called it, a moment ago, called it a comma-separated value file. And let me just open it in a text editor to show you what that means. Here you go. Here's what the file would look like if you opened it in a plain text editor. Again, you don't have to do this in order to import it. I just want to show you how it's set up. And you can see that for each value in the data set, looks like here's the data for Anderson County, Tennessee. You have some sort of value, 817. That is probably the gross median rent for Anderson County, and then right next to it you have a 66, which is probably the error margin for that estimate. I'll talk about that more in a moment. And between the two you have a comma, and that's where the name of this file format comes from. Between every value in the data set, like that 817 or 66, you have a comma. See, there's another one there, and then another one there. And these commas separate the data points in the file. The first row here consists of the variable names. Remember, we looked these up in the code book, and then there's a little description for each of the data points in this next row. So this is what the file looks like. This is why it's called a comma-separated value file. The main thing to pick up is the idea that the data that you're looking to analyze are separated by these commas. That'll be important during the import procedure that I'll show you in a moment. So closing that out, now here's what you would need to do to get this data file into Google Sheets. First, you have to open up Google Sheets, and that's pretty easy. Just go back to your web browser, and I'm going to log in using the account that I created for this class, that Journalism 3090 Demos Spring 22 file. If you don't already have a Gmail account of some kind, you can open one up by clicking on I've come to drive.google.com. The URL resolved to something more complicated, but you can see that if you type in drive.google.com and click enter, you'll come to the same screen. If you need to create an account, you can choose use another account and then choose create account right there, and you have to step through a process. It's going to ask you for your name, your age, your gender, and some sort of currently working email account that you can associate this account with for backup purposes and whatnot. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and log into the account that I have here, and I'll need to enter my password, which I'll do off screen so I don't share it with you. Be back in a second. Okay, I've keyed in my password and click next to log in. Once you're logged in, you're going to see something like this. My drive is completely empty because I haven't put anything in here yet. If you look at some of my other Google Drives, they're pretty full. But yours might look like this. And all you need to do is click New up here in the upper left corner and Google Sheets. And that's going to set up a brand new blank Google Sheet for you. Now, to get the comma-separated value file into Google Sheets, you would just click File and Import right there, and then navigate to where the file is. In my case, it's on the desktop, so I'm going to go there, and there it is. And there's rent data right there. That's the file that I want. Remember, I renamed it from the more complicated name that the Census Bureau gave it. If yours hasn't been renamed, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure it's the right file, and click Open. There we go. And Google Sheets recognizes, hey, this is a CSV file, and it's asking me a couple of questions. First of all, do I want to just replace the existing spreadsheet with the data that I'm importing? And that's fine because this is a blank spreadsheet. There's nothing that I'm going to lose if I replace this data with replace this spreadsheet with the data that I'm importing. So that's fine. And this detect automatically, this actually works fine by default. If you just click import table, it's going to work okay. But just to show you that you do have options here, if you click that little down arrow, you can specify what kind of character is separating the different data points. Remember when I showed it to you just a second ago, you saw that each data point in the data set was separated with a comma. So we're going to pick comma here, but tabs are possibilities, and even custom. If you choose custom, you can specify a particular character. Some data sets use that vertical pipe character looks like an up and down straight line. Sometimes there are, well, all sorts of things. But tabs or commas are the most typical ones. So you can specify comma here, or you can just take the detect automatically will work fine. But so anyway, when you're all set, click import data, and that easy. Google Sheets is going to have the data for you here. Now the next step is going to be checking the data to make sure everything worked okay, make sure there aren't any unexpected or strange things in the data set, make sure there aren't errors in the data set. Even when you get data from a reputable source like the U.S. Census Bureau, sometimes errors creep in, and it's a good idea to check the data to make sure that there's nothing wrong about it, because if your source of data is wrong, your analysis is going to be wrong, and what you report about the data is going to be wrong. And sure, you can always come up with the excuse that, well, the error was in the data that I downloaded, but that's really not going to count. When you do a data analysis and publish something about it, it's your reputation that's on the line, and so you want to make sure it's right, or at least that you took as many precautions as you could. So here, there are a couple of unexpected things. We have some missing data, for example, in here, so we need to be aware of that. Why is that data missing? Why is it not there? Looks like we've got, by the way, there is a totally rational explanation for that. This happens to be the column for median gross rent for no-bedroom apartments. Those would be like efficiencies. And not all counties have enough of that kind of housing to make a decent estimate. For example, this first row here, this is Blount County, Tennessee, and Blount County just doesn't have enough efficiency type rental properties to be able to estimate median rent. Blount County did have enough to estimate median rent overall. See how we have a value there. It's $817. Oh, sorry, that's Anderson County, not Blount. Blount is $874. But so that's a little odd. You just got to be aware of that. But it looks like we've got our estimated median gross rent. That's what we were after. And the reason I know that's what we were after is if you look here at the variable name at the top of the column, see it's B25031 underbar 001E. That matches exactly what we were looking at here back on the code book, B25031 underbar 001E. That's the variable for estimated median gross rent total. So that's what we were after. Outstanding. So now we know we're in the right place and got the right kind of data. Let's see, what's this thing? This thing right next to it. This is something called an error margin. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but we're going to need to keep that as well. What we're not going to need for this particular analysis is all the stuff in between. These are the median rents for efficiencies, there's the error margin associated with it for a one-bedroom apartment, for a two-bedroom, and so on. That could be interesting for a more detailed analysis, but for what we're doing today, we really don't need it. So I'm just going to delete those columns. I can just click on the top of the column here. Notice how the column down here gets highlighted when I do that. But click on the top of the column, and then keep holding the mouse button down and drag to the right until we get to, let's see, this stuff here. Let's keep this. Let's keep the GeoID and the name. So I'm going to let up on the mouse so I can move around now. And I'm keeping GeoID and name. And then over here on the other end, I'm keeping the B25031 001E and B25031 001M, keeping those. But I'm going to delete everything in between. I can just right-click on this highlighted area and just say delete columns, like that. So now I've got just the data set, the variables from the data set that I'm interested in. We also don't really need two versions of the column identification. We have the variable name up here, which I can decode from the code book back here, and then we have more of a a description of the variable that matches from the code book what we saw right here. See, median gross rent sorry, it matches this one right here. Estimated median gross rent total matches that. But I don't really need both of those things in order to be able to tell what variable's what. Between the two, I think this top row of variable names is more valuable, so I'm just going to delete that second row. Again, I just clicked on the 2 out here to highlight the entire row. Right-click and choose Delete Row. Okay, so now I've got a nice compact data set with just the data that I need. One more thing about spreadsheets, notice how this GOID value is kind of cut off. It actually has a 7001 at the end, but you can't quite see it. That's because this column isn't quite wide enough to display the data. In order to make it wide enough, all you have to do is come up here to the border between column C and column D, and notice how when I put my cursor on that border, see how it changes shape? It goes from that arrow to that sort of double-ended arrow. When it turns to a double-ended arrow, you can double-click actually, and it'll automatically stretch the column out wide enough to accommodate everything that's in it. You can also do this kind of in batch. You can do this for all of the columns by clicking this blank cell right up here. That highlights the entire spreadsheet. And then float your cursor over any column boundary. It could be this one or this one or this one or any of them, as long as the cursor turns to that double-ended arrow. And double-click once it does, and that will resize all of the columns to the size that they need to be for the data that's in them. Okay, so let's see. This is fairly clean. Something I might want to do is simplify the names of these counties. I don't really need county, Tennessee after every one of these names because that repeats for all of the counties. So what I could do is highlight that column, just click at the top of it right there, and I'm going to delete space county, space Tennessee from every entry in the column, just to simplify the county names a little bit. I could do that easily enough by clicking Edit and then Find and Replace right there. And you got to type this carefully because remember you got to have that space at the start in order for it to find everything. But there's space and then county, space Tennessee, and then replace it with absolutely nothing. See there? Make sure there's nothing in here. You might hit your delete key a couple of times just to make sure. But when it's done, click Done. When you're ready, click Done, and see. Wait a minute. I messed that up. Let's try that again. Where's replace? Oh, it's up here. Space, county, space, Tennessee. Replace with nothing. And let's see. Oh, I know what I did. I hit Done. I should have hit Replace All. So click Replace All, not Done. There we go. That's the magic. And now we have just the county names. See how nice, neat that is. And now the column's too wide, right? So I can actually resize it again. So now it's smaller, just big enough to accommodate the county names. All right. Now one more thing I think I'm going to do before we get into some analysis. I don't really want my analysis to include all of these counties. For reporting purposes, I really want to focus just on the counties around the Nashville area, the counties around Davidson County. Remember, I showed you that census map a while back. These are all of the counties that are available in this one-year data set. So I have a row for all of these counties. I really don't want to deal with Memphis in this analysis or any of these counties over here in East Tennessee. What I really want is just Davidson right here. and the counties that touch Davidson, the contiguous counties. So that would be Robertson and Sumner and Wilson and Rutherford, where we are, and Williamson. Okay, it'd be great if we had Cheatham County, but it's not available in the data set. Not enough people. But what I really want to do is delete from the data set the rows for all of these other counties because I really just want to focus on these. To do that, we're going to use a process called filtering. This is a pretty common thing to do to a data set. I'm going to give a little cheat sheet up here. I made this ahead of time. These are the counties that I want to keep. All right. So to filter the data, all you do is you click data and click data and create a filter right there. And when I do that, notice how Google Sheets has put this little upside down triangle shape at the top of each column. That's the filter button. All you have to do is, let's see, let me set this up so that I can see both my cheat sheet and the spreadsheet at the same time. Here we go. Move that over. Where's that cheat sheet? There it is. Scoot it out here. There we go. All right, so I just did that so I could see both things at the same time. And yeah, so to filter now, what I have to do is come to what I have are a bunch of names of the counties that I want to keep. So I'm going to come to the name county where all the county names are. Click the filter triangle right there. By default, they're all selected. See, they all have a check mark next to them. And I'm going to clear all those. That gets rid of all the check marks. And then put check marks next to just the ones I want to keep. I organize these alphabetically, so this should be pretty easy. Davidson is the first one I want to keep. And then Robertson, so go down to the R's. Somehow Robertson ended up, there it is. And then Rutherford, and then Sumner, there. And then Williamson and Wilson, the last two. Okay, so that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 counties. Good. And everything else is unchecked. So when I click OK, I haven't deleted those other counties. I've just hidden them. They're just not visible. See how the row numbers now, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go 1, 5, 13, 14, 18. The hidden columns, the hidden rows rather, are still here. They're just not visible. So what I can do now is copy the visible rows, just highlighted them with my mouse, right-click and choose copy, and add a new tab down here. Hit the plus sign, and you get kind of a little fresh workspace here. The original data is still back here. And paste, right-click and choose, let's see, let's just do paste. Yeah, that works fine. And now I have just the counties that I filtered for. Notice how now the rows are numbered in order again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are no hidden rows here. All the data is still back on this rent data tab right here. If I want to get it back, all I have to do is go click on data and remove filter, and it all comes back. Okay. But I have this data right here. Looks like I need to resize the columns. I'm going to do that again using that sort of batch mode. Highlighted everything, and then double click on the boundary between any of the highlighted columns and see how everything just automatically resized. All right, let's see, might be a good idea to go ahead and rename these columns to something more intuitive than what we have up here. First of all, let's double check. Remember I showed you earlier that the median rent in Rutherford County was $1,147 a month. Well, there's the value right there. So it looks like everything came out okay. Just a quick double check there. But let's rename this to just median rent. Okay, so just click on the what was there, and then type over top of it, hit enter. This thing here is the error margin. Let me take a minute and explain what that is. Unlike the decennial census, the census that the federal government takes every 10 years, which is an actual count of the of every person that they can find anyway, who lives in a given county or city or state or whatever. Um, the American Community Survey is based on a survey. That means they take a random sample of people in the county, in this case renters in the county, and ask them how much their rent is. But because it's a random sample, the resulting figure is not an actual count; it's an estimate of what the count would be if if the Census Bureau had talked to every renter in the county. So whenever that happens, you're going to get something called an error margin, which is just a measure of um, uh, of where the Census Bureau thinks that the actual rent figure in the county might be. So the error margin, to find out what that is, you would just add the error margin to the figure that turned up. So for example, for Davidson County, um, the the median rent in Davidson County, if you interviewed every renter, may not be exactly 1,192, but it's going to be $1,192 a month plus $25 or minus $25. So it's going to kind of be within a $25 range. That's pretty accurate. So that's what the error margin means. We'll come back to using that. This GeoID thing, this is just a unique geo-identifier for Davidson County. This is used in all census data sets. This is going to come in really handy later on when we talk about mapping, and you have to match these data up to a map file. And then there's the actual, of course, name of the county. Let's call that. Instead of name, let's call it county, like that. GeoID can stay like it is. That's not something we'll ever actually show to anybody who is using any of the graphics or maps that we'll produce. So this data is now pretty clean, and I'm ready to do some analysis on it. And I'll get to that in the next video.